Welcome to Brick by Brick. Join me, Loren Wernette, as I share my personal journey of building a thriving real estate and hard money lending business from the ground up. Along the way, we'll explore the strategies, challenges, and breakthroughs that come with growing wealth. Whether you're a seasoned investor or aspiring entrepreneur, or simply curious about the world of private lending and real estate, this podcast is packed with actionable insights, real-world stories, and mindset tips to help you build your own path to success brick by brick. Welcome to another episode of Brick by Brick. I'm your host, Loren Wernette. Today we have an Aussie with us, John Dwyer. John is a marketing expert, is renowned for getting Jerry Seinfeld to commit to a bank to do some marketing there, which he is historically known not to do, recommendations for businesses. And John is going to talk to us all about marketing and specifically direct marketing. So John, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure, Loren. Thank you for having me on.
So I gave not even hardly any introduction about what you did or how you got to where you are, but can you give the audience just a little bit about who are you, how you got started and what you're doing and kind of what you're doing?
Yeah, sure. Look, I've been doing this direct response marketing since the 1800s. So therefore I've been doing it for quite some time. There's a few wrinkles here. So therefore I've been around the block a few times, as they say. And look, direct response marketing is very, very different from what people would consider general marketing. So if you go to an advertising agency and you say to them, look, help me out, I need more sales for my business. The traditional ad agency will probably say to you, look, what we'll do is help people to fall in love with your brand so that they will taste your product. We flip that. And in direct response marketing, we get them to taste your product so they'll fall in love with your brand. Okay, because I'm sure you've heard the story so many times where the business owner, dad or mum, but dad comes home from work and says to the kids around the dinner table, look, we got 200 likes today. And the kids go, thanks, Daddy, but there's no food on the table. So direct response is all about not vanity marketing, but rather, putting an ad on Facebook today and putting money in the bank tomorrow. That's what direct response is.
Got it. So in a world where this, dominated by social media and followers and likes, how has your marketing strategy changed from, say, 15, 30 years ago, where that wasn't a thing and we were talking more mailers and direct calls? How do those things play in today, and how do you engage social media to augment?
See, I can answer that really well because I was around when Fred Flintstone used to chisel his ads into the rocks. So therefore, I've come right through from there to now AI. And all jokes aside, yeah, look, nothing's changed. What we used to do perhaps more over on TV or radio or newspapers or magazines now gets done online. And of course, it gets done quicker because of AI. And so the same things work. It's just the communication tools now are quite different. And the beautiful thing is, if you put an advertisement in the old days in a women's magazine, it sat there for a month. These days, if you put an ad on Facebook and it doesn't work, then you can change that in 10 minutes. So that's the wonderful thing about the world that we live in. If you make a mistake, you can fix it pretty quickly. Whereas in the old days, if that was a bad ad in a monthly magazine, you were embarrassed for 29 days, And I guess really at the end of the day, we tend to attract, my business is called the instituteofwow.com. And as that name infers, Institute of Wow, then, we tell businesses, look, if you don't have a wow factor with your offer, it doesn't matter what you're selling. If you don't wow them, then of course, basically someone will. And what you don't want to do is wow them on price, because you've still got to put food on the table. So the whole idea of direct response marketing is to take their eyes off the price and onto whatever the wow factor might be. And I guess the best exponent of that I've come across is McDonald's. Okay, so I know you've got 4 children and young kids under 10. And before you press the record button, I was telling you that I've got 6 children. They're adults these days, but like yourself, we had a pretty busy period when we had 6 under 12. And McDonald's, because of their Happy Meal promotion with the toy in the box, they got about $7 billion out of me, I think, when the kids were that age. And it had nothing at all to do with the hamburger. They never ate the hamburgers or the fries. It was all about the Disney toy inside the box. And so what we do is teach businesses how to create that same sort of incentive to take people's eyes off the price. And, we're pretty, I'm going to show off here, but we're pretty good at it because we've been around the block a few times and we know that we know what incentives get people off the fence. For example, if I went into a menswear store and bought a sports jacket and they said, oh, congratulations, we're giving you a free skateboard this week, they need psychiatric help. There's no way that I want to skateboard. But if they said to me, look, here's a movie voucher for you and your wife, then they've nailed it.
Got it. So it's not just about giving the farm away when you're talking about marketing. It's tailored offers for the demographic that you're going after. And I assume that also because we now moved into this digital age, that not only can you fix your errors quicker, but you have a lot faster data to improve the things that are working well and continually A/B testing. So, like, how has that evolved in your business over the course of time?
Yeah, I mean, look, because we're a marketing company, we're constantly on Facebook and LinkedIn and so forth ourselves, marketing our services. And don't get me wrong, you still get rocks and diamonds. There's still going to be a tire kicker or two that slips through the net. But what we tend to do is that, we're looking for businesses of a certain type that we can help because we know we can help them easier. For example, we steer away from accountancy firms or law firms. And the reason we do is because, they are left-brained people and they will work out 100 times over why something won't work. So I know there's exceptions to the rule, but nonetheless, people who are left-brained, generally speaking, are more practical than us crazy right-brained creative people. And you need them in your business, absolutely. It's just that to take them on as a client, I end up spending 4 times the amount of time to convince them that this might be a good idea to get them new business. So we do live by the message to market match mantra ourselves. So we go out and we target particular businesses. And I would just say to everybody, that if you are going to be using social media, then just make sure that you're not giving money to the 23-year-old who has not been around the block a few times. Give it to someone who's had some experience and obviously has skills in the social media sector, but give it to someone who's made a few mistakes because the likelihood is you're going to get a better result.
Yeah. What's your current opinion on the utility of like Google ads versus or including Facebook, right?
Yeah, Google AdWords will always win because it's going to deliver you a warmer lead. And I say that up until recently because we've just launched recently something which I've been in the contest game for a long time. So therefore, over the years down under here, I would provide a lot of promotions to KFC, McDonald's, the Monopoly style promotion, 7 Rupert Murdoch's newspapers. They got me to do all their scratch bingos back in the day. And the reason that they would come to me is because I understood, I guess, the formula of how to get people to enter a contest and then give you all of their details, not just their name and email, but give you more details. And we've just launched recently something which is blowing me away. And I know this is me patting myself on the back, but we call it the contestleadsmachine.com. And what it is basically convincing businesses to give away their product or their service as a prize in a Facebook contest or other platforms, but let's just say Facebook. And so therefore the ad, when people are scrolling, pops out and says, for example, we had a dentist. I'll give you an example. A dentist 2 months ago said, look, I want rich parents who have children with crooked teeth. And the reason I want rich parents is because what we want to do is sell Invisalign braces, which are the invisible braces. So we ran a contest in rich suburbs in his particular city, which happens to be Perth in Australia. And we just said to, rich parents, listen, if your child's got, crooked teeth, how would you like to win Invisalign braces worth $5,000? We got 1,000. He only spent $30 a day. So that's $210 for the week. He got 1,000 leads in the first week. We're not talking 10 or 20 or 30. His head exploded. The actual numbers were 991. He got 991 leads in 1 week for $30 a day. Now, of course, he gives one prize away, but guess what? He's got 990 people who've just raised their hand, they've glowed in the dark and said, my child has crooked teeth. So, of course, then he follows them up the following week, and not him personally, but his people, and they say, look, you didn't win the contest, but we've got a special deal for you at the moment that if you, obviously your children got crooked teeth, if you get in and, get in by the end of the week or the end of the month, guess what? We'll give you a free family vacation. And what we do is that we give him a free family vacation voucher where he gives that to people when they commit to buying his Invisalign. Now, this voucher is worth $1,000, but we give it to him for $50. So because we have an association with an American travel company that provides all of that. So we're talking Las Vegas, New York, Orlando, all that. So what happens there is that you've not only stimulated avalanche leads, but you've provided him with a conversion tool as well. That doesn't happen too often.
So in that instance, what was his conversion rate, or what has his conversion rate been on those 991?
That's funny, because he got through 100, or his girl got through 100 before she decided that she'd jump off a cliff because telemarketing's not fun. She was closing at 9%. We put an AI robot onto it because she couldn't keep it up, right? And the robot closed at 17%. So she wouldn't want me saying that. And that's what we found, is that because this particular formula is so crazy, it is so instantly crazy, where you can spend $10 or $20 a day and get, hundreds and hundreds of leads a week, that most of the clients now say to us, look, we can't follow them up the following week. Can you actually put your robot onto them? So we just have a human sounding robot, of course, do all the phone calls.
Interesting. So 17% conversion, I assume that the margins are pretty high on that. So that's pretty good ROAS then.
It's crazy. It's crazy. And look, I know you'll touch on the Seinfeld thing in a moment, but and if you don't, then I'll remind you, because I want to show off about that. But what came from that, because it was a campaign down under for a bank, where we got Jerry to come on TV and socials and to basically say, look, swap your home loan from Wells Fargo or the Bank of America across to this particular Aussie bank, and we'll give you a free vacation. The thing went nuts, and they took an extra $15 billion in the first few years. If Jerry knew what they took, I think he probably would have asked for more money. But the thing went nuts. And it went nuts even before we got Seinfeld. So it was just, swap your home loan and get a free vacation. It just went crazy, because a vacation appeals to every demographic. That's the good part about it. What happened is that when that campaign hit, then everybody around the world could see that, Jerry Seinfeld's doing this ad. So we had contact from a travel company, and they said, look, we've got access to unsold rooms right throughout America and the world. We don't know what to do with them. The hotels are happy to give up these unsold rooms to businesses to use as a Happy Meal toy, if you like, because, outside of school vacation periods, they're running at 30 or 40% unsold. Because if they fill the rooms with someone, even if they're not paying, then they make money out of food and beverage. So that's where they make their money, out of, food and beverage or massages or room service. What that means is that we can actually give any business worldwide, but let's just say in America, these vouchers for $50, because we get the rooms for free. So therefore, whatever margin we have, then, that's it. Then we've got to pay for advertising and staff and so forth. But we give these to businesses as a Happy Meal toy, and they pay us $50 for the voucher, but they've got something worth $1,000 then that they actually use as an attraction and a conversion tool. So in your instance, for example, you were mentioning you're involved in real estate. We have a bunch of real estate companies where they actually now say to people, look, let me into your home and provide you with a free valuation, or CMA, I think the terminology is. And we'll tell you whether you're sitting on $1 million or $500,000 or whatever it might be. And for letting us come in and, spend 30 minutes to give you that evaluation, we'll give you a free vacation. And all of a sudden the real estate agents, CMAs, go, crazy, because who doesn't want a free vacation?
Yeah. Makes sense. So we touched on the Jerry Seinfeld thing. So walk me through that story. He's notorious for not wanting to do endorsements, right? So how did you basically go about that? What was the idea around getting him as the endorser, and how did you end up convincing him to do it?
Loren, I thought you'd never bring that up. I really thought you'd never bring up the Seinfeld thing, because I'm such a shy devil. It's funny, a few of my buddies, because they see on the advertising that we do, this is the guy that Jerry trusts with his advertising, and they see all that online. And my buddies are generally, they own their own businesses, most of them, but they're generally contractors. And so therefore, they're concreters or pest control operators, so they think I'm an idiot. And they say, when are you going to stop pushing that? I said, never. Never. What happened is that this particular bank down under, called the Greater Bank, I launched the get a home loan, get a free vacation concept, and it went nuts. And about 3 years into it, we thought, well, how do we go to the next level? We've scooped up all the low-lying fruit. How do we go to the next level? And as it turned out, I said, well, what about a celebrity? And so we put a survey out to members of the bank and non-members and said, look, it's a pretty cheeky brand. And it was a little bit like Virgin Airlines with Richard Branson. It was a bit of a cheeky bank, okay? And so we put the surveys out and said, who do you think would be a cheeky spokesperson for the bank with this get a home loan, get a free vacation concept? And I was hoping it would be an Australian TV celebrity or sports star, because they'd be relatively easy to get. Robin Williams came up number one, Jim Carrey number two, Jerry Seinfeld number 3, and I had dug myself a hole. I thought, what an idiot I am. Why did I even bring that? You're never going to get those guys. And as it turned out, Robin Williams had to turn it down because he said yes, but then he had to say no very quickly. This is like a dozen years ago. We know that Robin Williams, unfortunately, has passed away now, but this was a dozen years ago. But he said yes, and then he said no because he had a movie. And then so we went to Seinfeld, and it took a good 3 or 4 months to get near him. It's easier to get to the Pope, I think, than get to him. But eventually I got in contact with George Shapiro, who had been his manager for 1,000 years. And we got on. Well, he's sarcastic, I'm sarcastic, so we got on pretty well. And he said, look, okay, I'll put it to Jerry. Money really wasn't an issue because he's got more money than God. And when Seinfeld said yes, I flew over to New York and I said to him, look, you have got more money than anyone. Why did you say yes to being a spokesman for this bank? And he said, I just liked the Aussie sense of humour. He said, you wanted me to take the mickey out of banks, and then I've been taking the mickey out of everything for about 40 years. So he said, yeah, let's do it. So, yeah, I mean, Jerry got good money, but nothing like people would have thought he would have got. He just did it because he liked the idea. And I think there's a lesson in that for all of us, and that is sometimes what you think would be the untouchable, if they've got more money than anyone else, then money's not going to turn them on. It's the idea. So if they like the creativity of the idea. So what happened is that I flew backwards and forwards for 3 years, and we would do the advertisements very close to where Jerry lives in the Hamptons, a little country town called Cedarhurst. We would just build a fake bank in an empty shop, and he would stand outside and do his stand-up routine. But of course, he's selling the vacations with the home loan, and it went absolutely crazy. I'm a complete moron, by the way, because guess what? I was charging the bank a monthly consultancy fee instead of a percentage of the extra home loans. I'm an idiot. I'm a fool.
So what was it about the idea? Like, what was the concept that he fell in love with? Just that he was going to give stand up and make fun of the bank, or give us an idea of what the overall concept was.
Yep, yeah. Basically, what it was Jerry standing. We did different concepts over the 3 years, but probably the most successful one was that Jerry had not been on TV for a while, so he's doing stand up in the middle of the street, okay, and he's outside the bank, almost. What would I say? What's the name of the people when they're sitting down and begging for money? What's that? What do you call them on the street? What do you call them?
Panhandler.
Yeah, something like that. So it was a bit like that, where he's outside the bank. He set up his own sort of loudspeaker system and his microphone, so he doesn't have anyone helping him. And then he tests it, testing 1, testing 2, all of that. And then he gets into his performance. And his performance is, why would you, get a home loan from any of the other banks when, in fact, they give you poor service and they don't even know your name, when, in fact, you can swap across to this particular bank, and not only will they treat you like a real person, but also you get a free vacation. And he just would do gags after gags after gags. And, of course, we picked the best one. And it worked like a dream. I mean, he could have said nothing. It still would have worked because he's Jerry Seinfeld,
Right. And you were giving vacations away, too.
And look, a message to market match. Because this was a cheeky brand, excuse me, excuse me, I'm losing my voice. Because it was a cheeky brand, that it really was appropriate that we had a comedian. If it wasn't a cheeky brand, then you might get Jack Nicholson or someone. But, if it's a cheeky brand, then a Robin Williams or Jim Carrey or Jerry Seinfeld was just perfect for it. It's funny, on the second year that I went back, I said to him when we were shooting, I said, Jerry, you don't have a website. And he didn't at the time. And I said, have you any idea how many Seinfeld caps and T-shirts you could sell? And he looked at me, he said, JD, my name's John Dwyer, but I get JD. He goes, JD, do I look like I need to sell any caps or T-shirts? And I said, that's right, I forgot. And, of course, what happened after the first year, I put him all over my website. Of course I would. I was showing off about it. And he said to me, by the way, he said, why do I need a website? He said, I've looked at your website. I'm on there more than you.
So Jerry, I need caps and hats.
Yeah, well, I said to him, look, if it was reversed and I was a someone and you were a nobody, wouldn't you do it? He says, yeah, no, go for it. Milk it.
So I'm interested to kind of go back a little bit. Where did you get started and how did you get into this? What was the precipice or the turning point that said, light bulb went off? This is the type of marketing, or this is what I am going to do, and this is how I'm going to do it to be successful.
Yep. My story is the same as many people who have come out the other end. I was an idiot, a complete moron, and then through making all these mistakes, eventually saw the light. I think I was probably a bit slower than most people. But, in my latter years at school and, university, college, I was pretty good at art. I could sketch up your Disney, characters or Fred Flintstone, or I could sketch up a landscape pretty quickly. But then even way back then in the 1800s with Little House on the Prairie, I could see that this thing called computers was going to come along. And so therefore having a sketching skill was probably not going to be the smart move. And so I thought, well, how can I use the creativity that I felt I had between my ears in such a way that I don't have to draw? I can use it, with the technology that's around the corner. And thank goodness I did that. And of course, these days, as I'm sure you would say, you would agree, Loren, I mean, you don't want to be a copywriter or graphic artist these days with AI because Mid-Journey or ChatGPT is going to, sort of send you out of business. So therefore, that's what I did. I thought, advertising. So I got involved with a major retailer here in Australia, which is a big supermarket chain. And I got into their advertising department. I learned how they did direct response marketing because this particular supermarket chain would have what they call continuity programs. So if you walked into the supermarket to buy your groceries, for every $10 back in those days, you'd get a little postage stamp, like a stamp. You'd lick it and you'd put it onto a saver sheet to get cheap cookware or glassware or things for your kitchen. And it worked like a dream. And I thought, hang on, people are coming to Woolworths, is the name of this company. People were coming to Woolworths versus other supermarket chains because of this, wow factor. They could get cheap cookware or glassware if they saved enough stamps. And I thought, hang on, there's something to this. So I left. I did my, advertising degree at university before this, but nonetheless, at college, as I'm sure many would say, you don't learn very much at all because the teachers have never been in business. I walked away with the certificate, but I don't think it was worth much. So therefore, I left and set up my own little business called Dynamic Ideas. We're called the Institute of Wow now, but it was the Dynamic Ideas Company. And what we did, I had no clue what I was doing, but we actually went out and provided service to businesses when I was in my 20s that was direct response. And it was from the learnings of this. And then as the years went by, when I got more savvy at this because we had more clients, or should I say more guinea pigs, that we could crash test dummies that we could test this stuff on, all of a sudden the light came on big time. And this direct response stuff, if a business, the crazy part about it, Loren, is that 97% of businesses worldwide have never used an incentive. 97. So you've got Amazon out there with their Prime membership giving you an incentive to become a Prime member because you get free movies and free shipping and free music and so forth. You've got McDonald's with their Happy Meal toys. You've got Subway doing their, sort of giveaways when you actually collect enough points. You've got the local cafe, probably with a little loyalty card. Every time you get a coffee, you get a stamp and save up 10 stamps and you know the coffee. But 97% of businesses worldwide have never used an incentive. They're just too accustomed to dropping their price when they need to clear the warehouse. And there's a better way to do it. The better way to do it is take their eyes off the price, not on the price.
So talk to me about a little bit about that. So as a business owner, and we have a fund and we do loans, right? So the thought of reducing our rates and taking a margin hit isn't very appealing, especially when you're a new business. So talk to me about that mentality that you deal with when talking to new businesses about using your service and how you get them over the mental hump of, hey, you need to offer these incentives so that you get more customers, and that's how you drive the business.
Yep. The incentive thing is really, really simple. Firstly, it should be a good message to market match. And as I said, a skateboard for me buying a three-piece suit would not be appropriate. So you've got to make sure you've got the right incentive. But I have to say to you that, the vacation thing, it transcends all boundaries. It doesn't matter. I mean, the only business I've knocked back with this is a funeral parlour because they rang up, and this is serious, by the way. It's going to be funny, but he was a client of mine 2 years earlier. And when he saw that we had the vacation thing where he could buy 50 of these vacations for $50 a piece, he said, I'll grab them. And his name was Tom. I said, no, you won't, Tom. And he said, look, I've done all sorts of things to put food on the table for 6 kids over the years. However, I'm not going to sell this to a funeral parlour. And he said, why not? I said, I don't think it would be too tasteful. The headline would be, let us burn your relatives and you go on a holiday. I don't think that's going to be very good. But for every other business, it doesn't matter whether they happen to be butcher, baker, candlestick maker. If you say to someone, look, spend X dollars with me or buy my refrigerator or use my landscaping services or whatever it might be, and I'll give you a free vacation to Orlando and Vegas or Cancun, nothing can beat that. Because if you give someone a $50 dining voucher, they know that you value them at $50. If you give them 2 tickets to the cinema, they know you value them at $50. The reason McDonald's toys work is that they get that toy for 24 cents out of China. But when you buy the Happy Meal, that toy as a parent or grandparent looks like it's a $5 toy from Kmart. So the secret is having a low cost but a high perceived value. And that's what these do. The vacation vouchers are worth, they're 3 nights in America. So, you try finding a hotel in New York or anywhere like that for less than $300 or $400. So 3 nights means it's worth $1,000. But, the businesses get it from us for $50. That's the absolute perfect storm. When you can get something that's appealing for a small cost, but has a high perceived value, you never have to think about price discounting ever again for your business, because this will kill any price discount. And really, at the end of the day, the reason that price discounting is a bit silly is because it'd be a little bit like the corner store taking on Costco across the road. If you're a small player and you think you're going to beat the 40-ton gorilla on price, you're on drugs. Because the thing is, the moment that you drop your price, guess what? The big guy down the road is going to beat you within 5 minutes. But he can't beat you if you've got something unique like a free vacation.
Yeah. The McDonald's Happy Meal thing is interesting because McDonald's does a lot of very long-term thinking things. Like, for example, I read somewhere the Play Place and the Happy Meal, they are designed to basically associate very happy childhood memories with children to create long-term customers. And so while you're as a parent, I'm just giving them a Happy Meal so they'll shut up. Now they're got a positive emotion reaction to McDonald's, so that when they're 37, they see the golden arches and there's some mental background stimulation that says, oh, good stuff, even though, the food might not be what you want, but you got a mental association. So do you see other things in marketing that are similar to that other players are doing, or have you played with kind of that long-term approach as well?
Yeah. I look, the big banks down under. There's a bank down under which is probably our version of the Wells Fargo, so it's that big a brand. It's called the Commonwealth Bank. They still do it today. They give free money boxes to children at school when they're 5 or 6 or 7 years of age. Those money boxes are basically just a small money box that's the shape of the head office of the Commonwealth Bank. Okay, so it's almost like giving someone a White House money box, right? And of course, back in the day before digital, then of course the kids would put their dimes into the money box, and then eventually when it got full, they'd go into the bank, and of course the bank would convince them to open up a bank account to put that $5 or whatever it might have been. And these days it's probably not as prevalent because of the fact that we all have credit cards, even 5-year-olds. Yeah, the only thing is that I would imagine your audience, Loren, is unfortunately for them, because I fall into the same bracket, by the way, not big enough to be able to play that long game. Because the long game, really, it comes about through all sorts of touch points, and some of those touch points are sponsorships. And I always say to, people who are doing less than 5 million turnover, many of them doing way less than 1 million turnover, look, you're not going to be able to afford to sponsor the Olympics. You won't be able to afford to put your face on the side of a bus or the back of a taxi. So what you should do if you want to put food on the table is ignore all of those vanity metrics, because the only way that people can measure sponsorships is to say, did you know that when your basketball team was on TV, your logo, which happens to be on their sleeve or their pants or some ridiculous spot on their jersey, got 2 million views? Well, that's vanity metrics, because unless people looked at your logo on Michael Jordan's shirt and then raced off and bought something, now the big companies can afford to, excuse the language, but piss it up against the wall like that. Small companies can't, because you've got to put food on the table for the kids tonight. So we actually, to be honest with you, say to people, look, brand building is wonderful and continue to do that if you want. But at the same time, what you should do is actually make sales through doing clever direct response marketing. And the Greater Building Society, which is the Seinfeld campaign, we measured the brand awareness before we started the campaign, and they had done that for many years. The brand awareness of the Greater, when we came out with get a home loan, get a free vacation, and that ran for 11 years. Jerry was involved at the back end, but that ran for 11 years. They were the only bank in the world that were giving out loans, okay, that never advertised an interest rate for 11 years. Can you believe it? I mean, you're in the game, so can you imagine any financial institution for 11 years not advertising an interest rate? And the reason we did is because we took their eyes off the prize. Whenever the bankers, left-brainers, would say to me, JD, thanks for coming to this, fortnightly meeting. What we wanted to say to you is that why don't we do it now? It's been very successful, but why don't we get people to get the vacation? They have to take out an interest-bearing savings account, and they've got to do this, they've got to do that. I said, no, whoa. McDonald's works because of the KISS principle. Buy a Happy Meal, get a toy. Buy 2 Happy Meals, get 2 toys. In this instance, there's 9 words. Swap your home loan and get a free vacation. That's it, 9 words. Do not screw with it. Just leave it alone, because if you start putting speed bumps in front of people, they've got to open up this account, it's all over. Forget it. I said, do you realise what magic carpet ride you're on? You're a bank and you've never had to advertise an interest rate on your home loan. It's crazy.
Yeah. That is crazy coming from that world, right? Rates to everything. And when you're talking about trying to keep people out of that logical side of their brain, which is where you instantly go when you start talking money and banking, right?
Now, I have to say to you, Loren, that does the incentive work better for middle class consumers? Absolutely. Okay. So therefore, if someone is a multi-millionaire and they live in Beverly Hills, it won't work as easily for them. You have to work a bit harder. I'm not saying it won't work for them, but the thing is that you have to work a bit harder. Now, this particular bank I speak of is a building society, okay? And a credit union and building society's target audience tends to be working class people. So there's a lot of contractors and people like that. And so therefore, this is perfect for them. It just takes their eyes off the price, bang, straight away like that. So if your audience happens to be in that working class range, and for most of us, selling anything, that happens to be, the biggest demographic, then you won't beat this. There's nothing that'll beat it. I've tried microwave ovens, I've tried skateboards, bicycles, I've tried movie tickets, dining vouchers, you name it, I've tried it, and this thing beats it by 20, 35 times over. I have to give you this example. It's a good one. Has nothing to do with the holiday, with the vacation. A guy comes to one of my song and dance seminars, and I'm up there doing the whole usual thing about, a bit like what we're talking today. And at the end of it, he comes up, he says, look, I've got a difficult one for you. I mean, okay, I don't like difficult clients because they're too hard, but anyway, go on. And he said, I've got a turf farm. At first he said, I sell grass. And I said, no, look, I can't get into that. He said, no, turf. I said, front yard, backyard. Oh, okay, right. And he wasn't far from where I was holding the seminar. So the next day I visited him. And sure enough, he's got 2 miles worth of turf. I said to him, how much turf do you have? And he said, look at the mountain range there versus the mountain range there. It just went on and on and on. And he said, look, the new season's coming up. I've got to get rid of that turf so I can replant. And I said, okay, so what's the issue? He said, well, I charge $6 per square metre. We talk metres in Australia. And he said, the guy, all of our competitors, when I charge $6, they charge $5.80. And then I've got to drop it to $5.70. And of course, we all know the race to the bottom story. I said, well, you've got to take their eyes off the price. And he said, yeah, but they're all landscapers. And he said, they're pretty sharp. He said, we don't sell to normal homes. We sell to landscapers. I said, okay, what do you think landscapers like? He said, I don't know, you told me. And he had seen my get a home loan, get a free vacation ads on TV. So he said, what about that? Now, at the time, we didn't have these $50 vacations, so therefore I couldn't give him that. I said, 99% of your audience are men? He goes, yeah. I said, well, they like beer. And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, give them a carton of prestige beer, not just any beer, but prestige beer for every home's worth of grass. And he went, right, okay, well, I'll give it a shot. Now, landscapers back at that time, this was 5 or 6 years ago, I think it was the year before COVID, they're not exactly technophobes, but they don't use online as much as someone wearing a tie. So we sent out a mailer to them. So we sent out a mailer to 500 landscapers in the area, in the city, and we said, for every home's worth of grass that you buy from us, we will give you a carton of beer. He rings me 5 days after we sent that mailer out, and we sent an email as well. And he said, I got a problem. I said, oh, God, I knew you were going to be a nuisance client. What's the problem? He goes, we've got no more grass. I said, what? 2 miles worth of grass? And he said, yeah, all gone. And he said, I've never seen anything like it in my life. Now, I've got him on video telling the story. Of course, we can't do that today, but I've got him on video telling the story. And I had to cut out all the F words because this guy's head exploded. He said, I can't believe it. He said, the biggest pain in the backside client that I had was Jim. And he said, Jim would ring up and say, how much is your turf at the moment? And I'd say, $7 a square metre. And he'd say, I can get it down the road for $6. And he said, it was always a banter backwards and forwards. He said, he rang up and said, I want 18 homes worth of grass. I don't care when the grass gets here. I need the 18 cartons of beer by Friday. I've got a party.
It's all about incentives, isn't it?
Yep. So it's
Is
all
what you
about
make
the
it about.
message to market match and setting. If I'd had the holiday thing at that, like we call it holidays in Australia, that's why I'm referring to holiday. But if we had the vacation voucher thing then, I probably would have given that to him. But for him, the message to market match was perfect. These guys, 99% of landscapers are men, and we gave them what they wanted. Premium. It wasn't just a carton of beer. This was the premium beer. So if you paid, for Coors, for example, $50 a carton, this would have been the $75 a carton beer. It was up there. So not only was it beer, and to them that was mother's milk, it was also prestige beer. So they thought, hallelujah, I've got this special beer. But yeah, so therefore we're talking within a week, his entire inventory was sold out. And on the video testimonial that he was kind enough to give me, he said this thing worked so well. He was buying turf from other turf farms to keep up with the demand for the beer.
That's good. That's good strategy too. So
Yeah.
so let's make this a little practical just for our last few minutes here. Let's imagine we have a HVAC company and I want to start doing what you're proposing. Give me like the top 3 steps. I've got an HVAC company. I want to sell more HVAC units, more tune-ups, more whatever to this market. What should I be looking at first, and what should my next 2 steps be in order to get this off the ground and have a successful campaign?
Now, this will show you how stupid I am and how I cannot even spell IQ. What is a HVAC? What's a HVAC company?
Sorry, heating and cooling systems for homes.
Okay, so air conditioning and what have you. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good. Okay. And I know now I can see the thought bubble above your head, Lauren, going, boy, he is stupid. He really is stupid. Because the
Probably
HVAC.
call them something different in Australia. That's all.
Yeah, it is.
So,
Yeah. Look, okay. And look, we have a stack of air conditioning clients. So therefore, it's a pretty easy ask. I mean, they are in a classic Me Too industry. So just like solar and just like motor car dealerships, anyone in the air conditioning space is in a Me Too industry. In other words, they're the same as everyone else. Basically, there's no differential because I suspect that they've got the same brand of air conditioner or multiple brands of air conditioners as everyone else. And by the way, most businesses are in a Me Too industry. I mean, I'm in the marketing industry, and there's a million people out there that claim to be marketers. My point of difference is not only my history, so I can go on about all this stuff that I've done in the past, which a 23-year-old can't do, but our point of difference is the specialist area of direct response marketing. So what I would suggest the air conditioner guy would do is that he would compare his products and services to any of the competitors, and if there's any point of difference there, obviously ramp that up as an Elvis Found headline, but there probably won't be because he's in that Me Too sphere. So what I would do with him is that I would actually run a Facebook contest, and that Facebook contest would zero in geodemographically on whatever zip codes he's chasing, and you can do that, of course, with Facebook. And the contest would be win an air conditioning for your home and asterisk to the value of. So therefore, if it ends up being a home out of Beverly Hills with 62 bedrooms, and of course he doesn't get caught, but let's just say to the value of $5,000, right? As simple as that, he will get, with the program that we've got, because we have a few tricks that we put with it, he'll probably get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of leads in that first week for a $20 a day spend. And then do exactly what I mentioned to you at the outset of this podcast, and that is that how we do this is on a 4-week basis because there's no money in it for us to do it on a weekly basis. So we say to people, look, come on board for 1 month. And what happens there is that and if anybody wants to have a look at it, I hope you don't mind me plugging it, but it's just contestleadsmachine.com. So if you go to contestleadsmachine.com, you'll see it. We actually charge per lead. So we were doing it in the beginning whereby we basically put it together and the air conditioning company would lay down the 20 or 30 or $40 a day. Now we actually do it for them and just charge per lead. So therefore, what happens is that he runs the contest every Friday throughout that 4 weeks. There's a preliminary draw, and there's a reason for that. The clever part about that is that you want to ring people who entered in week 1 very quickly in week 2 because they're still warm. So they've entered to win your air conditioning service in week 1, and we have a preliminary draw each Friday over the 4 weeks. And at that preliminary draw, someone's drawn out, of course, and they are one of the 4 people that go into the major draw at the end of the month. Okay. But the condition is that you can only enter once. So if you enter in week 1 and you're not drawn on the Friday of week 1, we can ring you then on Monday on week 2 to say, look, you didn't win, but obviously you need an air conditioner. You wouldn't have entered the air conditioning contest if you've already got air conditioning, right? And of course, you can only enter once. You've entered once, so therefore we're ringing you to give you an unbelievable deal. And that deal is that our air conditioning unit that is normally $7,400, we're going to give you for a special price this week. If you want to do that, it's entirely up to you. Or you can say to them, which I would favour, and that is that if we've got a special deal, if you get in before the end of the month, we'll give you a free family vacation. Now, this is a family vacation. It's for 2 adults and 2 children. So therefore, you're talking about a family vacation. In your instance and mine, that'd be no good, 4 kids.
It's part of a family vacation.
Just leave the kids that you don't love as much at home. That's what I used to do.
Right.
Yeah. And that will be, as we say down under, a no-brainer. And I can never guarantee anything because despite being a show-off, I can't guarantee anything because I don't know how good someone's product or service is. I don't know whether they're wearing an ankle bracelet, But, we've got statistics to show that if you run a contest on Facebook and give away your product as a prize, there's a pretty good chance with a very modest spend that you're going to get hundreds and hundreds of leads each week.
So I always have to ask the same question at the end of all my interviews. But before I get to that, I have one other additional question for you is, what is the biggest thing you've learned about marketing over the course of your career that you think that somebody that's just getting started in marketing for their own business or doing marketing at any level should know that you wish you had learned faster?
Probably one thing, and the question that you get quite often in interviews like this is, what would you tell your 21-year-old self? In my instance, I made the mistake of, I'll give you the answer to that in a moment, but leading up to that is that in my 20s, I was silly. I hung around people who kept on saying why all the time. And then in my 30s, when I'd had a few kicks in the guts, I decided, no, that's not right. And let's stop hanging around people who were left-brained and they'd say, oh, why? Why would you do that? Why would you experiment with that? And I ended up hanging around people who said, why not? And so therefore they were crazy. Okay. So therefore, and I call it whatever you want, hang around crazy people, but you don't want to hang around idiots, but what you do want to hang around are people who've got an entrepreneurial spirit. And I'm suggesting that the name of your thing, Brick by Brick, of course, you've got that entrepreneurial spirit because your belief is you build it and build it and build it and build it. And so that's one thing I would say, hang around people who say, oh, why not? And that way you'll be hanging around people that are going to be encouraging and people who are willing to at least jump in the deep end every now and again. But the big thing that I did learn, and I probably already covered it, and that is do not depend on price. Because, let's face it, with Amazon out there these days and with Costco, et cetera, then, you're not going to beat those 40-ton gorillas. There's just no way. And particularly if you're a Me Too product. If you've got a product that's the same as everyone else in your industry, then for goodness sake, stop fooling yourself that you're going to win on price. Start thinking about providing a wow factor. Now, we do lots of wow factors. I mean, we've got gas discounts, so therefore people buy something, you get dollars off at the gas pump. We've got $1 million draws. I can get $1 million from an insurance company for 20 grand. So, we would say, buy my product or service and you're in the chance to win $1 million. Now, that's a headline. And we get that through an insurance company and we put those promotions together for businesses quite often. I mean, we had a resort in Fiji that was running at 30% or 31% occupancy. And he said to me, how do we get this up? And he was a 25-year-old resort with new fancier resorts opened about 10 miles down the road. I said to him, well, because you're an older resort, you're not sexy. So how about we do this? Your target audience are travel agents in Australia. Why don't we say to the travel agents, for every night they book someone into your resort, they're in the chance to win $1 million. We got the $1 million for 20 grand. And so whenever you walked into a travel agent in Australia at that period and you said, look, I'm going to Fiji, where should I stay? They'd say the Hideaway Resort. And then when the couple would say, but what about the Hilton or the Sofitel? Then the travel agent would say, no, it's got rabies. Okay, they got Ebola. And they were, where should we stay? We got to stay at the Hideaway Resort. So he went from 30% to 100% within a week and stayed there for 3 months because the travel agent was being rewarded with an entry into the $1 million draw for every night that he or she booked you into that particular resort. Again, had he dropped his prices because he was a 25-year-old resort, would never get that result. He might have gone from 31% to 41%, but he wouldn't have gone to 100% for 3 months.
Oh, you might have gone less because people tend to associate higher price with higher quality too.
You got it. Yeah. I mean, his head exploded. I mean, most of our clients, and I know it sounds like I'm patting myself on the back, but Most of them, because they've never touched on anything like this, they've just been told to put their face on the side of a bus or the back of a taxi. They've never really, and the speed of this stuff is what I think makes it stand out from the crowd. I mean, that guy's resort was jammed with 100% occupancy within a week of talking to me, because we can get it up pretty quickly. And with the online world being what it is these days, that Facebook contest, for example, that I was mentioning to you, that can be up and running in 48 hours.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. And I think the other piece, I love the first part where you're saying, why can't I, or that lines perfectly up with one of the biggest revelations I had in business, where for too long this is why I can't do this, and this is why I can't do that. And when I started thinking about how I can go do something instead of constantly shutting it down, like my whole outlook on life and business just exploded.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I very much resonate with that statement.
Yep.
So apparently, like all the other podcasters, I tend to ask people what advice they would give themselves when they're younger as my last question. But I think you've kind of answered that already. If you have additional insight into that, happy to take that, but won't belabor the point if we've kind of covered.
Yeah, look, it is, and it is what I said, and that is, try to hang around. It's not all that easy, from time to time, but, these days with online communities that you can join. I joined a group in Phoenix, Arizona, and there's a guy in America called Joe Polish, and he's a business coach, but he hangs around with Anthony Robbins and, all of that level. And he had a program. It was not cheap. It was 25K, and you went to Phoenix 3 times a year, and you mixed with those people. And so I joined. I had to take a deep breath because, 25K is 25K. And this was a year or two before COVID. And I have to say to you, it was the best investment I made, because you were sitting next to Russell Brunson, who runs ClickFunnels, or you were sitting next to Ryan Dias, or you were sitting over the table next to you was Anthony Robbins. It was that caliber of people. And that's why he could charge this sort of money. And as the name implies, Genius Network, I think I was the only one there that was not a genius. But anyway, all of these other smart people were there. The contacts that I got from that were incredible, and every single one of them had been on the roller coaster ride. No one had been on the merry-go-round. They'd all made it and lost it and made it and lost it. So therefore, you could relate to them because they'd been on the roller coaster. And it was just a great experience each time I went there. It cost a fortune, because by the time I went from Australia to Phoenix 3 times throughout the year, and the 25K, my wife was really pleased that I think I blew about 50K on that. But yeah, I would say, you don't have to go to that level, but try and hang around entrepreneurial spirits. Try and hang around people who go, oh, why not? Rather than people who go, oh, why? Why would you do that?
Yeah. And I would add on to that you should try to find those groups that the price makes it just feel just a little bit uncomfortable for you, because often the price is what guards the level, or filters out the level of people that are in that room. And so if you want to grow, you need to be in rooms where you're the smallest person. And so if you're like, oh, this is $20, is no big deal, like you're going to be at $20 caliber people. You want to be $100,000 caliber people, you got to probably spend $100,000 to get in the room. And so you'll learn far more from that. And I kind of suck it up every year and am a member of several things that pay a good amount of money that I'm like, do I really want to spend this much money? But every time I do it, it pays for itself, and then some, through knowledge, through networking, through everything else.
Yeah, well, I think it was Dale Carnegie. Who was it? Was it Dale Carnegie, or someone said you are the average of the 5 people you spend most of your time with? Yeah.
100%. So, John, where can someone find you if they want to, learn about the Institute of Wow, or learn about what you're doing, or just reach out to you?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to do that, because I haven't reached the stage yet. Despite being a baby boomer, I don't own my own private island just yet. So therefore, I am contactable. Okay. So if you, I'll give you 2 or 3 of them. If you wanted to have a look at what we do, go to theinstituteofwow.com. Not just institute, but rather theinstituteofwow.com. So you'll see there'll be Jerry Seinfeld all over it. But there's a case studies tab that if you wanted to have a look at the history of, winning case studies, you can do that. And by the way, one thing that I will show you is that, because I'm an idiot, when I was asked to write a book, I decided to write a big one. And when you go to the website, you'll be able to see this. And if you're listening to it but not watching it, this is the tabloid size leather-bound book. And in this 280 pages is hundreds and hundreds of direct response case studies that worked. I didn't put the ones in here that didn't work, but when you go to the website, you'll be able to grab that. For the book itself, to print this, you wouldn't believe it, Loren, but it's $420 to print the book. So obviously I can't hand out the book, right? Because it's leather bound and gold tipped edges. But we're happy to give away the digital version. So if anyone wants that, go to the website. And if you're interested in the Facebook contest thing, which is just, it probably in the last 5 years, if you said to me which is the thing that's really working well above anything else, it would be this. Just go to contestleadsmachine.com. And what happens is that when you do go there, it'll show you, again, case studies. I always say, look, if you're going to engage the services of an advisor, it doesn't matter whether it's legal or whether it happens to be health and wellbeing or marketing or business, have a look at their history, because their history normally will show you what your future might be with them. And I guess the other thing is, if anyone's interested in the vacation promotion, then just go to Vacations Incentive. So that's vacations, plural, vacationsincentive.com.
Awesome. I will make sure I put all those links in the show notes so anybody that's listening to this can easily access that. You've been very interesting to talk to. I hope that anybody that's listening to this and wants to learn more about John or about some of the marketing stuff that you're doing, or figure out how to market better for their business, maybe do some incentives, since 97% of you aren't doing any incentives. Reach out to John and follow up with there. So, John, any parting comments you have?
Just one thing I forgot to do, and that is email address. I call myself a marketer. I think I must be an imposter. I never even gave you an email address. So the email is very simple. It's john@theinstituteofwow.com, JOHN. The only reason I say JOHN, I had a client come on board yesterday, and he said his name's John. And I said, oh, okay, well, we've got something alike. He said, no, we haven't. I said, why? He said, I don't have a H. And I said, okay, so his is JON, but mine is John, JOHN, @theinstituteofwow.com if you wanted to email me.
Awesome. I'll make sure that's in the show notes as well. Thank you, John, for your time. And thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll see you again next week.
My pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in to Brick by Brick Wealth Building Conversations. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. It helps more people find the show. For more tips, resources, and updates on my journey, follow me on Invest with Loren. Let's keep building wealth, one brick at a time. See you next week.